Isn't it interesting how we often find very interesting references in history about people who have made an influence on the stage of world history, and yet now their names seem irrelevant and past and unassociated with our lives today, and we wonder how did they end up getting the history books, and yet they've left very little trace in our consciousness, and perhaps they're known, there's a monument somewhere about them, they're perhaps more famous in one part of the world, but those memories fade, those monuments crumble, and after a while often people's names are forgotten. And the Bible talks about that kingdoms will rise and fall. Sometimes there's an opportunity for influence and invasion and power, and yet we're also told in books like Habakkuk in the Old Testament how even when a nation has got tremendous power, and it seems that they're terribly unjust, and their opportunity, their day of invasion and conquest is very much within sight, and yet later on, they also have to be called to account for what's happened, the way they treat people, and so many places in the world. And I often think about the Balkans because I know people there, and was watching some stuff yesterday all about that part of the world, how they have been subject to so many different invasions and so many different very, very horrible wars, and in all of it sort of ending up with pretty difficult ethnic conflicts. And there's lots of historical issues around that, but the reality is they felt so trampled on at different times by each other as well as by others from outside. But God has a heart for people who are crushed and broken, those who are subject to injustice. Jesus came to a nation that was a terrible victim of injustice. The Roman Empire had rolled in, and people felt it very strongly. But his message wasn't about overthrowing the Roman Empire. It was about something more powerful than that. Not just political turmoil and upheaval, but an eternal kingdom where God is on the throne, and ultimately he will judge the nations and will bring them to account. And so I pray that whatever situation we're in, we see the turmoil around us, injustice as well, our eyes will be turned towards him. And as we maybe reflect on those situations too, we know how to show God's kindness and mercy to people who might be suffering injustice and suffering real oppression as well. But remembering too that we can pray for those in authority, and also their days will be numbered. They will be called to account for what they've done, and there's only one eternal throne that will outlast them all, outlast every other name, the name that is above every name, that the name of Jesus every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So I pray that we will get that understanding, that revelation for ourselves too, that we see God's eternal purposes are the ones that will prevail. And bless you today as you hear the news, as you kind of hear the different upheavals and different situations that are going on in our own nation, in the UK or in the US or elsewhere, that you would also understand God's sovereign throne will outlast them all.